Hi, my name's Phil Kelly from K-Spec Building Consultants, building inspector. I'm about to conduct a quality assurance inspection on lot 223 Ezra Court at Karalee. First of all our inspections are done to the Australian standard. So AS 4349.0 is the general standard for inspections to be done. Everything will be inspected from what we call the general viewing position, which is approximately 1.5 metres away or greater, or 600 millimetres when we look at fixtures and fittings. The first thing that we do on every inspection, hopefully every inspector is doing the same thing, is we're going to check the tops and bottoms of the doors to see if they've been painted. So, little tools that we use, obviously, most of the supervisors at Golden Grove should have one of these. We check the tops and bottoms of the door, starting at the back of the house and moving our way forward. So I'm running the mirror along the entire top of the door to see it's all sealed, and the entire bottom of the door. Now I'll do this on every door. So the reason why we check all the doors first is to ensure that we're not pulling the mirror in and out of our pockets at every door we come to, and it gives us a chance to focus on the inspection that we're doing. And as you can see here, only about half of the top of the door has been painted. Any defects that we find, we then take a photo of those defects, and that photo is then sent through to the office or to the builder to show them what the defect is and where that location was. So we will then write our reports based on the photographs that we take during the inspection. The last doors that we check are always the external doors, top and bottom. The external doors are usually the more common doors that aren't painted top and bottom, because the internal doors are sprayed, usually by the painter at the spray stage. So they've actually physically got to come back and paint the top and bottom of the doors. And that's why they're more common to be found, and even in Golden Grove jobs they're more common to be found to be external doors that aren't sealed top and bottom. Now, after we check the doors, we basically conduct our inspection. Now, I'm a lefty, so I always start left hand side of the front door, and I'll work my way around every wall, articulating myself until I finish to the right hand side of the door from the entry point. So basically I'm going to conduct my inspection. I'm going to look at the front door. The painting of the front door is obviously essential because it's the first thing that any client or anybody sees when they come up, and you want to make sure that the quality of the finish on the paint is good and it's consistent. As you can see, there's already a green dot been put on the door by the supervisor. K-Spec, we use green tape, so I will now put green tape on any paint defects that I find or any other defects that I find during the inspection. So when I start at the front door, I always push it back flat and try and step back as far as I can, obviously to view it from the normal viewing position, and we'll then dot out any defects. If there's dirt, we basically rub it to make sure it is dirt and it's not actually a defect in the door. Ensuring that while we do this, we're checking the hinges on the door to ensure that there are screws in every hinge. Now, this is another common thing that we do find on Golden Grove jobs, is screws missing on the door hinges. The other thing that we'll also check while we're there is the screen door, and make sure that the screen door also has all the screws in the hinges. Now, some people laugh at that, but at the end of the day, we want to get a uniform, complete finish. And as you can see up here, there's actually a screw missing in the top hinge of the screen door. So I'll now take a photo of that, ready to include that into my report. So then I'll close the door, and the screen door, and I'll open and close it, and just make sure that the closer is actually working and doesn't require adjusting, which it is on this job. And we quickly look around the door frame and make sure that any paint that's on the door frame that needs to be cleaned off, we'll dot it out, because we class that as a paint defect unless it's widespread. So if we're looking at paint that's overspray onto hinges and other parts of the property, if it's one little area, we'll put a paint touch up on it for the painter to just come and wipe it off. However, if it's consistent throughout the property, we'll actually write that as a defect on the job. And as you can see here too, there's actually a screw missing in the striker plate, which has already been picked up by the supervisor, but we'll now include that in our report as well as we go around. So after we've checked the front of the door, make sure that there's no paint defects, we'll then close the door. So I close the door 3 times, once with the striker, twice with the striker, and then the 3rd time I'll actually close it without the latch. The reason why we close it without the latch is to ensure that the door is not binding on the door frame as we go around, because sometimes when the latch strikes the striker, you can't actually feel the difference with the door. After that, we want to look for consistency in the margins around the door. So the margins around the door should be consistent. They can be 3 to 5 millimeters, and that can be 3 millimeters up here and 5 millimeters to this side. However, it can't vary more than 1 millimeter across the leaf of the door. So we're trying to look for consistency in regards to those. And as you can see, this is quite consistent. It's difficult with Golden Grove front doors because you do use an aluminium door frame. So this comes pretty much pre-hung and there's not much adjustment that you can do in it. More importantly is the consistency on the leaf of your internal doors, which is picked up on the QBC standard and tolerances guide. Then we'll push basically the door closed, make sure again that there's no paint defects. If there's a little bit of paint on the glass, I'll put a green dot on it just to bring the attention to the painter or the cleaner as we go through, and make sure that they're coming in to clean it. Again, make sure that there's no paint on the door hinges. If there's a little bit there, we'll put a green dot. If we start seeing this as a consistent item, we will then photograph it and put it as a defect. I'll then, basically, the door can stay closed so that we don't get refractive light up here on the surface. And then I'm going to work my way along the hallway. And any defects that I can see when I'm standing against the hallway as I walk along, I'll be looking up and looking down. Now I'm trying to focus on the skirting board and the wall and the cornice. We're not going to be focusing on the ceiling at this stage. The ceiling will be done at the end of the room. So as I finish in a room, I will walk back and check the ceiling and dot that out separately. Otherwise your eyes change focus too often between two separate colours as we go down. So we work our way along here, and basically I'm now looking left hand side at anything that may be missing or not working at this stage. So I can still see some paint defects. Somebody's dragged something across the timber there, so we'll dot that out as we go. Make sure that the miters are flush and they're not opening up. So the miters should have been glued and pinned by the carpenter. And if they are, we will just dot it out, ready for the painter if it's just a light sand. If it's quite significant, and I mean significant more than 2 millimeters, then we'll write that down as an extra defect onto the report. So basically we're making a judgment call on what we actually write versus what we class as a paint touch-up. So if anything's not painted at all, we actually write it down as a defect. Doesn't matter what it is. However, if it has been painted and it just needs a touch-up or a bit of a sand, then we're going to dot it out ready for the painter to come in and do that for you. Again, before we enter the room, because it's on this side, we'll just quickly check that all the screws are in the door hinges. Again, quite common for screws to be missing on Golden Grove jobs, so always be checking those before you get us guys out to do the inspection. Then we'll enter the room. So then we work our way around the left-hand side of the property to the other side of the door. As we enter any door, we've checked already that there's screws in the door hinge. We will then do the exact same thing as we did on the front door. We're going to close the internal door 3 times. Checking that the striker latch works and the door doesn't pull out from the striker. And then the last time, we're going to close it without the latch being there to ensure that there's no binding on the door frame. And as you can see, the margins around the door are very, very even, which is what we're looking for. Just make sure that there's no paint. If there's a little bit of paint on the door hinges, we'll again put a green dot on that. Now if I've found 2 door hinges now that's got paint on it. If I find another, it will go down as a defect on the job, basically for consistency. And then we work our way along. So if we come across now a light switch on the wall that we're looking on, we'll turn the light switch on and just make sure that the light works. The light works, I'm happy. I'll then usually switch it off unless there's no light, natural light in here. I'll then work my way along the garage wall. Now, I won't open the garage door at this stage because I don't want to create a refractive light situation, which is what we talked about before. However, we don't also want to be inspecting the ceiling with the fluoro light on because it's going to show up defects in the ceiling that are probably within the tolerances. So we may open the garage door at that stage to have a look at the ceiling from the natural light position. So I'll work my way along the wall here. Keep looking now. We're walking approximately that 1 to 1.5 metres away from the wall as we go down. Again, focusing on anything that jumps out at us on the skirting board, wall or cornice at this stage. Always try not to dot bugs, which we can see up here as we go along because they're not a defect. they're certainly going to move around. And I'll step around and we'll have a look at this wall as well as we go along. Now, another thing that seems to be very common with builders is paint overspray on the garage door mechanisms, the top of the garage door and all along the top there. So because the spray is widespread, we're going to put a green dot on that one and we'll take a photo to show how much paint is actually on the garage door mechanisms, and that will be added as an additional defect because the painter should have taped this up, and if there was any overspray, should have cleaned that as he took the tape off to ensure that it's okay. Now we work our way along the top of the garage door, and it is quite common to find that there's insufficient paint coverage on the wall above the garage door. Because of all the mechanisms being in the way, the painter needs to focus more time to try and get the paint coverage that he needs to on these. So again, another quite common thing on Golden Grove homes is to find that I'm going to ask for that whole wall to be repainted, because if I can see through it from 1.5 metres away, it doesn't have enough coats on the door. And again, we've got paint overspray all over the door mechanisms here. And even though I'm not focusing on the ceiling, there's actually a paint defect that I can see on the ceiling here. And I'm lucky to be tall enough to be able to reach the ceiling standing on the ground. And I'll just take a photo of that as well so that I know we need to comment on the garage door mechanisms. The paint touch up we won't, we'll just expect the painter to sand that and obviously repaint it at that stage. We do try and take some photos of the paint defects so that when we come back for the second inspection, if there's any questions or concerns whether they've actually been done, we can bring up those photos and focus on the areas that we took the photos of to ensure that they have been done. We keep working our way along again, and as you can see the paint overspray is widespread, so I just put another green dot on there so the painter knows where to focus when he comes back. And then I'm going to work my way along the wall here, and any defects that are visible from that 1.1 metres away, 1 to 1.5, we'll dot that out. When we come to an aluminium glass sliding door, everything gets tested again. Like we said, everything will be tested that we can test that's here at the time of the inspection. So we unlock it, make sure the lock works, and we slide it. And we make sure that it slides freely. And there's no bumps or any difficulty in sliding the door. Somebody will be expected to be able to use this every day. We'll also test the sliding door, the screen door, as we go. Latch it, lock it, make sure the lock works, and then we'll also shut the screen door. And as we're doing that, we actually do have a quick look around the coating on the aluminium door to make sure that there's no scratches or any defects or dents that are happening as a result of that. Now, another common thing that we find on Golden Grove homes is that the termite barrier has been installed underneath this sliding door. And as you can see, the termite barrier is visible. Now, I think it's good building practice that termite barrier gets trimmed so that we have a neat finish, so just the slab is exposed. So I'll put a green dot on this, and that'll go down as another defect. Before we get here, it's always good to check these little areas, and it'll make it a lot easier for you to decrease the number of defect items that K-Spec are putting on the list for you. So after we've done that, we basically have a look at the glass as we go through too, making sure there's no significant scratching to the glass, remembering under the standard there is allowed to be some scratching to the glass, as long as it's not visible from the normal viewing position, and as long as there's no more than 3 scratches within 100 millimetres. There can be scratching within 10 millimetres at the edge of the glass as well. So glass also needs to be viewed from the inside for scratches. So we always stand on the inside and have a look through. And as you can see, it's a little bit dirty, but there's no scratches in the glass. So then we move around again, making sure that we're looking at the paintwork as we go and the timber work. And now I'll come around here. So again, we just keep working our way around the wall, standing that 1 to 1.5 metres away, and keep dotting out any paint defects that we see at this stage. I'll then come back to this side behind the door, close the door again, and just focus on anything that we might have missed when we looked at the back of the door, but look at that wall. And then after this stage, we're basically completing a room that's got a door. So now we'll turn our focus in the garage to the ceiling. So once I've finished the walls, I'm going to look up. One thing we're going to look for in a garage or a walk-in road is there a manhole cover. As you can see, there's no manhole cover installed here. At K-Spec, we usually put this down as an omission instead of a defect. So in the second part of our reports, where it says, is the manhole cover installed at the time of inspection, yes or no, and we'll just say no. We'll also dot out the fact that the painting has been marked because insulation, people have been accessing this, so it's going to need a touch up by the painter. So we go around. And then I'll basically just walk at a brisk pace around the ceiling, not getting too close, remembering we want to be 1.5 metres away, and just see if there's any paint defects. Really focus on the ceiling, because in a moment we're going to open the panel lift door and that's going to cover the ceiling. So we want to have a look at the areas that are going to be covered by the panel lift door. When you're doing this, make sure you're also looking down at any debris that's on the floor that you don't trip over. Quite common is seeing holes in the ceiling that haven't been patched from when the garage door was installed. So we'll dot those out. From a painting perspective, anything that's larger than a 5-cent piece, we'll put it down as a plastering defect. Anything smaller than a 5-cent piece, we would expect the painter to be patching that and painting it. Now, every builder has a different system and a different expectation, but that's just how we look at it from an inspection point of view. Anything bigger than that is damage that needs to be noted so that we can come back and inspect it again at the second inspection. After I've looked at the ceiling, I will then run the garage door. So basically I'll run the motor up here and we're just going to ensure that the garage door is running smoothly without any issues, any bumps. One of the important things obviously when we open the garage door, and this is another common thing we do find on Golden Grove jobs from time to time, is the skirting board has been finished down both sides. So when the garage door is open, we want to make sure that the skirting board has been finished to close up the gaps and that there's no exposed frame obviously underneath that for a neat finish. As you can see here, fibrous cement sheet has been used as the skirting board. That way it doesn't bind on the door when the door closes, and it's good building practice. You don't get the marks on that down there. The other thing that we'll also focus on when this is quickly open is to ensure that the reveal, the timber reveal, has been completely sealed at the junction across the rebate on the slab. Now, we want that sealed if it's hard down. If it's not hard down and it sits out here, we will check with our mirrors to ensure it's been painted on the bottom, because the end grains on the timber is obviously where the moisture will get in when the rain hits the ground and bounces back up, and that's what causes the fungal decay or the rot that you see on timber reveals on the older homes when you drive around them, because they weren't sealed there. So ensure that's sealed. Obviously the ceiling there, because it's timber on the ground, we would expect that there's a termite cold joint being installed there, or the silicone that has been used is a termomasticide, so the termites can't actually get into the timber as well. Now that the door's open too, we'll just check and make sure that the seal that comes down on the top of the reveal is quite even and tight. What you do find, and we have found on Golden Grove jobs before, is the actual plastic edge strip on the plasterboard is missing, leaving quite an uneven gap, you know what I mean, across there. So that would be a defect if that's the case. Now we know that the plastering finish over that plastic edge strip probably won't be the best. If it's pretty bad, we will dot it and expect the painter just to give it a light sand and then repaint that area. After we've finished looking at what we need to while the garage door is open, we'll then walk back over to the garage door motor and just give it a run, and we make sure that that is obviously going to close now and run smoothly in the other operation as it goes down. And as you can see here, we've got paint all over the garage door edge. So I'll take a photo of that as well, and we'll include that in our report on the door mechanisms. So the door is closed flush without popping back up, so it doesn't need any adjustment. The other thing we make sure too, this is the safety catch obviously on the door. It's quite often that the plastic handle breaks or goes missing. So if it's not there at the time of the inspection, we'll write that down as a defect as well. And it has happened from time to time on Golden Grove jobs as well. Now, just before we leave the garage, we just have a quick look at the garage slab, make sure that there's no significant cracking or damage to the slab. Now again, if there are chips in the slab and they are large, we will then ask for those to be filled so that we get a consistent finish. More notably, you'll find that damage will be along that garage rebate out the side there. And that's because, you know, machinery or something like that has touched it when the driveway was being installed and things like that. So we would expect that to be filled with ardite and levelled off to give a nice neat finish. Part of the cleaning process, obviously, on our reports, we just state whether a clean is required, yes or no, and it does state it that includes the garage. Now, there is no requirement for this to be pressure cleaned, but just say there is a large amount of paint, or in some instances, which we've had in the past, where the plumber's glue has been spilt all over the floor, we'll expect that, we'll write that down as a defect and expect that to be cleaned off as part of the cleaning process. We want to make sure that this is neat and well presented, obviously, to the client at that time. We've now exited the garage, again, staying to the left-hand side, making sure we don't miss anything. We come along, there is an air conditioning remote here. Now, if there is one, we may turn it on and just test to see if it works. If there's no remote, then we don't test the air conditioning remotes. It is common practice, obviously, for these to be put into a handover box in some cases. However, we've tested it, it turns on, it turns off. Again, another light switch here. So we're just going to turn all the light switches on. Make sure that each switch either turns on a light or turns off a light, making sure everything's working, which it is. And we'll now turn it off. Then we'll work our way around into the kitchen as we start here. So we're now in the kitchen. Again, remember fixtures, we can actually stand up to 600 millimetres away from them, not 1.5. And this is obviously a fixture when we're in the kitchen. As we come across here, we are going to open and close every door and have a look inside the cupboards. What we're looking for inside the cupboards is that the margins are consistent. We're looking for the margins consistent on the doors as we open and close them, making sure there's no damage to the laminate, which has happened again on Golden Grove jobs. Now, after we've checked the doors, in the fridge space, we're going to have a look on the underside of the fridge space as well. As you can see through here, the screw cover stickers are missing on all the screws, so I'll dot those out just to make sure that the supervisor's aware, and then we'll take a photo of that to include it in our report. Another thing that we look for is that there's an infill panel installed in the back of the fridge space. Now that's because there's a bulkhead over the fridge space, so if there's no infill panel, even though it might be corniced on the inside, there are, you know, vermin that can quite easily get in behind the fridge, even pets, and get caught up into that bulkhead and you can't get them out. So it's always a good thing to ensure that all those areas are sealed, and it is actually a requirement of the Australian standard for kitchen installs that all gaps be sealed, and any change in direction, which is a change in direction of the bulkhead there, does have an infill panel to cover it up. And then we'll work our way along again, just making sure that we don't have any damage to the laminate. Quite common with the Golden Grove homes is we do find a lot of paint touch-ups that need to be done to the bulkheads above the cupboards. The painters probably need to focus a little bit more of attention, and even the plasterers, to make sure that we get a nice neat finish. That's probably because the bulkhead's only MDF, and then the cornice is obviously attached to that. But it is a focal point of the house, so we want to make sure that it's neat and tidy as we go around. Again, I'm going to open and close all the doors. Open and close the doors above there, making sure that there's no screw cover stickers missing, making sure that the doors don't bind on anything, making sure the margins between the doors are even as we go down. Open that one up. And as you can see, another screw cover sticker is missing in this cupboard up here, so I'll take a photo of that one. And we'll shut the door. And again, we'll just check that the range hood operation works, make sure that the margins around the range hood are even. We'll pull it out. The light and the fan is already on. If it's not on, we'll just turn it on to make sure it works. And then we push it back in, make sure it's smooth operation and it's not going to bind on anything. Then we'll sort of look at the focus as we go down on the cupboards, because we've now looked at the overhead cupboards. One of the first things we do is we make sure that the cooktop is attached to the bench top. So we just try and lift it up. If it's secure, then we're happy. Have a quick look at the bench top and make sure that there's no scratches or marks or dints that you shouldn't have there. Maybe even run your finger along the edge, because this is the most common place for them to be chipped. Somebody's dropped something on the edge of them. Have a look at the splashback tiles. As you can see down here, there's a little bit of grout missing. on the splashback tile there, so we're having a look at it. We'll take a photo of that and add that to the list and put a bit of green tape on it, which is over here, ready to go. Then I'll come down the bottom to these doors as I keep working my way along. I'm just rubbing because there's marks on here, just needs a clean. There's nothing there that's damaged. Open, have a look in there, close the door. With the oven, obviously we can't test that. We're not going to put a roast dinner on while we're here. We just open the door and close it. Make sure it's not binding. Make sure that the margins around the door to the cupboard are quite even. Again, we have found on Golden Grove jobs before where the oven's protruding at the top but flush at the bottom. So it's obviously binding on something that needs adjusting. I'll then open the next door as I go along, making sure there's no defects in there. And while I'm down here, I'm just having a look at the visible part of the kick, making sure that the caulking and the silicon's done. Now, we want to make sure that any gaps that are larger than about 2 or 3 mil are sealed. If the kick is tight, then we won't ask for that to be sealed up. But if it's not tight, we want it silicon. We want to make sure that the lines are snapped and clean and there's no problems. And then I'll stand up and keep working my way along again to the pantry. We'll open the pantry up. Again, checking the bulkhead, checking all the shelves, that there's no damage to the shelves, making sure everything's clean and tidy, making sure the pantry door is not going to bind, and that there's no damage to the laminate. We want to make sure too that everything's painted, even underneath here. It's quite common for the painters to miss underneath here. Now, we do talk about defects being visible from 1.5 metres away. That's defects that are caught in the paint. If something isn't painted at all, then it is a defect. So if they've missed that altogether, even though you can't see it from the normal viewing position, we're likely to dot it out. We're also making sure that the gap between the gable end of the pantry here and the wall is even. There's a little bit of a gap there, but it's not something that needs to be silicon. It'll be just a paint touch-up. So I'm going to dot it out and the painter can just gap that and paint that again when he comes in and make sure it's all good. Then we keep moving left so that we don't miss anything, and we enter the laundry. First part we're looking at in the laundry is obviously we've got the linen cupboard here, or the broom closet. We're also going to have a quick look down as we come through. Now, the laundry obviously being a wet area, it has to be waterproof to the peripheral or to the wall floor junctions. That waterproofing must terminate at a water stop. This is the water stop here, and that water stop must terminate at the top of the finished floor, so it has to be visible. We haven't had too many issues on Golden Grove jobs with that not being there. There has been a handful, and wherever we don't see that, we're definitely going to comment on it because it is a requirement of the Australian standard and the building code. So then we'll move past that, and I'll open up the broom closet now and do the exact same thing as I did in the kitchen. Make sure all the screw cover caps are on there. Make sure that the painting above it is neat and tidy, which again, we've got a bulkhead, so a few dots need to be put on there, and we'll close the door. Keeping working our way around, we'll make sure that there's no damage, and it is quite often that we find damage to the top edge of the laminate on these laundry cupboards. We want to make sure that they're not chipped. If they're chipped, they're going to need some sort of rectification so we can't see it from the normal viewing position. Again, the plastering needs some attention and the painting needs some attention above the bulkheads there. Come down, making sure the gap's there. We want to make sure that we've got a splashback installed. Laminate is a water resistant surface, so you can use this as the splashback, but it has to be completely sealed, so no water can get around it. It's within 70 ml of an open tub. As we go down, we're going to run the taps. So we will run the taps at a consistent rate, let it run for a bit, and then I'm going to lower myself down here, and we're going to open the cupboard door on the laundry tub, and while the tap's running, I'm just going to run my hand over the trap, make sure that the water isn't leaking out the trap. Again, quite common to find a leaking trap underneath there. Once I'm satisfied that that's not the problem, I'll turn the tap off, takes the noise away. We definitely want the wall underneath the laundry tub painted. Again, this is something that has been missed on Golden Grove jobs from time to time. The Australian standard says that everything must be sealed. Table 5.1 in the standard basically says in a new house, the plasterboard has to have a certain number of coats and everything like that. Even though it's under the cupboard, we want to make sure that if anybody opens the cupboard, we've got a consistent finish. Now the pipe penetrations for the taps through the wall, we want to make sure that the flange cover on those is covering the holes and there's no significant damage to the wall, fillerboard or plasterboard behind those, which in this case we haven't. Then we'll shut the door. We actually want, in this situation, to ensure that the gap between the cupboard edge here and the tub is actually silicone or corked and sealed. And as you can see, it's not sealed there. Again, another massive opening for vermin proofing to get in there. Everything else is sealed. If something gets in there, there's no way for you to get it out and it becomes a trap. So we want to seal that up completely so that we can't see that in there. There's an incomplete item. Then we work our way around to the other side, making sure that this side's also sealed, which it is. So obviously somebody's just forgotten it on that one. And then we'll work our way around. So again, we're checking this side of the tub to make sure that the wall junction is sealed, which it is in this instance. We'll have a look for our paint defects as we walk our way around. Have a quick look behind the blinds just to make sure that there's nothing damaged or missing behind there. And as you can see in here, we've got paint oversprayed all over the sliding door track down the bottom. So because it's quite large, we may write that one down as an item to ensure the painter does clean it off. As we work our way around, we want to make sure that all the wall floor junctions are also sealed. And as you can see here, the caulking hasn't been done between the floor tiles and the actual track on the sliding door. So again, we're going to put a green sticker on there, take another photo to show that it's not sealed, and then we'll put that onto the defects list as well. Standing back up, we'll again have a look at there's no significant scratches or marks around the coating on the sliding door. Again, check the lock, and we're checking the door again. Just slide it, make sure it slides freely, make sure it locks. Then we'll open this back up, check the screen door, make sure the screen door locks as well, and close it back as we go around. Again, following the left-hand side of the wall to the next one. Down here we've got paint overspray all over the skirt tiles. So we're going to dot that out to make sure that the painter realises it's there and comes in and cleans it. While I'm standing here, I'm looking for other little paint defects that are visible from the normal viewing position. We then come across another light switch, so we'll just turn the light switch on. Now that's one light for there and an external light, and they're both working, so we'll just switch those off as we come out. Now I'll come to the door again and I'm going to test that the closing the door and making sure that that's okay. Now closing the door, again checking the margins around the door. Margin is a bit larger at the top than down the sides, but like we said, it can be up to 5 mil as long as it's consistent, and it is a consistent margin on there. As we look around here, we want to make sure that the hinges, now this is another common thing that we find. When the painters pop the hinges on the door to paint them, they decide not to tap the hinges down flush. We want to make sure all the hinges on the door are seated flush. So if we find these throughout the property, we'll probably put it as a defect item and we'll just say ensure all hinge pins on door are seated flush throughout the property. That way the supervisor or the painter or the carpenter, whoever you send back to fix it, can just run through the house and check all of them, making sure that they're okay. So again, we're just coming out of the laundry now. Just a quick check of the hinges again, making sure all the screws are in the door hinge, which they are, which is good. So we work our way around, just making sure that there's no paint defects. Put our green dots onto the paint defects as we go. Now we're coming across the other half of the kitchen now. As you can see, we've worked our way around to the left-hand side to ensure we don't miss anything. Again, we're going to run the tap on the kitchen sink. We're going to make sure that the mix is not loose on the kitchen sink. Basically, by us testing all this stuff, pretty much we're going to find anything that's a defect naturally through us turning things on and off. Now I've ran that for a fair bit. I haven't had a look underneath here yet, but I'll open up the cupboard doors. Now, when I open up the cupboard doors in here, again, we're looking for the common defects, which is any screw cover caps that are missing. I'm running my hand all the way along the trap and down the trap and even under it, just to make sure that there's no water that tells me that the trap's not leaking at this stage. We're making sure that any of the holes that are drilled through the shells are neat and tidy, and the holes drilled for the pipes, the service pipes for the dishwasher, are also neat and tidy. If they're not neat and tidy, then we will mark them down as a defect and we want some sort of rectification done. We're also making sure that there's no gaps around the flanges on the pipe penetrations. If there's gaps around there, we're going to expect them to be sealed, okay? So, and there's no extra holes that have been drilled for service pipes. That's something we do find on Golden Grove jobs quite regularly, is gaps around those flange pipes. Then I'm going to close the door, making sure it doesn't bind, making sure the margin's consistent. Then we move along to one of my pet hates, and quite a common thing that we find, although less likely to find these days in Golden Grove because they know we look for them, is to ensure that the dishwasher space has been completely caulked and siliconed inside the dishwasher space. So we want silicone to extend all the way down the side, around the back, and out the other side. Probably the most important place in the kitchen to be siliconed is here. The dishwasher, we won't run it, obviously. That's something that the supervisor can do just to test that there's no leaks or anything like that. But we'll open and close the door, making sure it doesn't bind on anything. But as you open and close that door when the dishwasher's in operation, there's water and steam that comes out. That steam can run down the sides of the cupboards and actually damage the bottom of the cupboards if it's not siliconed in there. That's one reason why we actually pick it up. The other reason is the Australian Standard for Tiling says that all abutting surfaces must be sealed with a flexible sealant. So we can rely on that to make sure that the job's always done properly. The reason why it's probably missed is that the dishwasher was installed before the caulking installer came in, and they decided not to pull the dishwasher out as part of their process. So now we move along from the dishwasher space and we check all the drawers. We actually open and close and look inside all the drawers, making sure they're not damaged, making sure that they have smooth operation and they don't bind. It is quite common on Golden Grove jobs for the drawers to be binding. We actually have had quite lately instance where we're just pulling on the drawer to open it and the whole front of the drawer comes off. I believe there was some faulty pieces of plastic in the install, but that's the reason why we open and close them. If we're opening and closing it once or twice, you think the owner or the tenant's going to open and close that possibly every day, it's got to at least withstand our hands opening and closing it. The other thing we want to see is a consistent margin between the drawers, and as you can see here, the supervisor's actually already dotted this out, and the margins down the side of the drawers are completely out. So another thing that we're going to take a photo of, and we'll put that as a defect on the list to ensure that they are adjusted for a consistent margin. Then we work our way around the stone bench top. Having a look at the bench top as we go, remembering we can stand 600 mil away. Another thing that we always look for at K-Spec, and it's been reported on Golden Grove jobs quite a lot, is the bar back on the kitchen. So this is what we call the bar back underneath the bench. Along the top here, you can see the laminate gets chipped. So we're expecting, if the laminate has been chipped a little bit on the edge, that this be completely caulked and sealed, because that's actually damage. And as though I might need to get down to have a look at it, just imagine somebody sitting at a dining room table over here, they're probably going to see that. So a bit of silicone goes a long way. Same down here, ensuring that all the gaps are completely sealed, and you can see the bar back will probably do with an extra screw in it, and that's why we've got a gap down the side here. So we'll dot out the chips in the top of the laminate as we move along, and we'll just snap a photo of that ready to include it in our report. There it is. We're just checking that there's no damage to the stone bench top as we go. When we get to the splashback, we want to make sure that the top edges of the tiles are painted for consistent finish, making sure that your power points and your data points or anything like that are level as we go through, which is what we do as we walk around on everything. Just dotting out any paint defects that we find as we go. Stand back up, and I'm going to start walking back through anything that we can rub off. We won't put green dot on because that just needs wiping with a cloth. We don't want painters painting over dirt. Then we'll come around this corner here, and again, we're now getting to the back of the house where we've got the bedrooms and the bathroom. So we're going to go through all of those, keep working our way around to the left. So I'm going to, because this is the hinge side, I'm going to look at the door hinges as I go in, and basically make sure that there's no screws missing in the door hinges. And it can be deceptive sometimes too. You've got to get down close and have a look. And we'll come inside the room and we test the door. Close once, close twice, and then for the third time without the latch, just making sure that our margins are even and everything's nice and even. As we go around, making sure that the door stop's not broken, dotting out any paint defects we see as we go on the door hinges. Another common thing on these door hinges is sometimes the plastic catch is broken. We find that quite often on Golden Grove homes as well. So we will make sure that the door does close back and does catch as we go through. Having a look at the door. Again, while we're doing this, we're always looking for paint defects as we go. So if we see something that we know we're going to be able to see from 1.5 metres away, we will put a dot on it. And also something that's going to be not aesthetically pleasing. Then we work our way up to the wardrobes. So wardrobes, making sure that the doors slide freely. So we will close the doors to the side that they're supposed to be closed. And we'll step back and we'll make sure that the sliding door actually closes flush with the jamb on both sides. So as we step back, we'll work our way over this side and you can see that it has closed. Now, a jamb or a frame can be 4 millimetres out over 2 metres. So if there is a slight gap, we probably won't comment on it. While we're here, we're also making sure that the vinyl covering on the front of the door is not damaged as we go around. Another common thing we do find on Golden Grove jobs is damage to the vinyl, and whether it's been done by the installer or it's been done by trades that have come in subsequently. Now after that, I'm going to open this up. I grab the hanging rail, I just hang my hand on it just to make sure it's secure. I'm not going to hang off it. We have a look at the top of the shelf, make sure that there's no screw cover caps missing again, making sure the gaps are all even and tight. If the gaps aren't tight around the back, then we are going to ask you to cork them up and seal them. The other common thing that we always find, not necessarily on Golden Grove jobs, but on all builders' jobs, is the painter hasn't painted the architrave inside the cupboard. So this is another time where we may pull our mirror out and just have a look. And as you can see, it's all painted in there and sealed. And I could feel that anyway because it's gloss finished. Some painters don't gloss finish it, but we at least want it sealed. And inside the cupboards, we want to make sure everything's been gapped and that there's no damage to the plasterboard or walls inside there. Then I'll slide this one shut and then open this side. Again, just grab the hanging rail, have a look inside, making sure everything's consistent, and then I slide it back. We'll also make sure that the timber along the bottom of the sliding robe door has been painted. Another common thing that we do find on Golden Grove jobs is some of the timbers underneath there haven't been painted in the past. Again, if something's not painted at all, we're going to comment on it. So we're going to put it as a defect, not just a paint touch up. So if that's not painted at all, it's another item that goes on your list. So ensure that that's done. Then again, we work our way around again to the left, over this side, just making sure that we don't have any paint defects visible from the normal viewing position. Have a look at your switches, power points, making sure that they visually look level. We don't get a level out unless we think that they're out of level. What we do is a visual inspection, so we're not going to measure and test everything. If it visually looks correct, then usually it's within the tolerance. If it doesn't look correct, we may test it and just measure it to see if it is within the tolerance. In this instance, obviously we're going to slide the blinds open. Just going to make sure there's no paint or scratches around the coatings on the aluminium frames of the glass. We're going to slide this open, slide it closed. We're going to look at the screen, so the fly screen, barrier screens that have been put on here. We're making sure that the fly mesh hasn't been damaged. Another common thing that we have found is the fly mesh damage on golden grove jobs before. So we're looking for all of that as we go along. We step back, have a look at the glass, making sure that there's no significant scratching to the glass panel, and we keep working our way along the wall, up and down. And again, we're coming back to a switch. So because it's on our path of direction we're going, we're just going to switch the light on and off. And we're also going to turn the fan on just quickly, making sure that the fan operation is fine. Again, because we're now finishing in this room, we're going to check the ceiling before we leave. So we just do a quick walk around, having a look up, making sure there's no damage. And I can see that the electrician's actually marked the ceiling, and he's probably put the fan in. So I just put a green dot on that, ready for the painter to patch that as we go. And there's no other defects. Ceilings are usually pretty good. The only time that we usually have to dot the ceilings out is if somebody's damaged it or there's some sort of debris caught underneath them. So, but all in all, especially the Golden Grove guys, we usually don't have too many issues with the ceiling paint. And then after that, we're finished in this room. So we then exit to the left. So now we've exited the bedroom. We've come into the hallway. So we come to our linen closet. Linen closet again, got the same sliding robe doors as the wardrobes in the bedrooms. So we're going to slide those, make sure that they slide freely. We're going to close them up, making sure that they are no gaps where the sliding doors come onto the jamb. While we're here, if there's a paint defect or mark in there, we'll check that. We're going to slide the doors open now, again checking that there's paint inside the cupboards, which there is. Making sure that all the screw cover caps are on top, especially the top shelf. What we find, I'm about 6'1". Sometimes the installer might not be as tall as me and he thinks that nobody's going to be able to see the top shelf. So make sure that they do put screw cover stickers on there. And then we actually bend down and we look down at the shelves as well. As we come under, we want to make sure that they're actually installed all the way down the bottom. Consistent finish, even if they can't see it, it's just laziness if they haven't put it on there. So we'll put that on the list. So then we'll slide the both doors over this way and do the exact same thing on this side. And I can see there's a paint touch up that needs to be done on the cornice in there. Everything looks consistent, everything's gapped. Make sure that the silicone has been done inside here. Now the wall floor junctions underneath here, the silicone's been very inconsistently finished, so it's actually shrunk back and hasn't been wiped back properly. So we've got a defect in here in the silicone. So I'm now going to shoot a photo of that. And I'm going to expect the installer to come back and finish that off properly. And then finally, as I stand back up, I'm going to slide the doors closed. And I'm going to have a look and make sure that there's no damage to the vinyl, again, on the front of the sliding doors. And we keep working our way along to the left, down the hallway, looking for paint touch-ups as we go. Okay, so now we've come around here and we're entering the main bathroom of the house. Again, because it's a wet area, we're just quickly making sure that there's a water stop installed at the floor opening for the waterproofing. Walk in, check the hinges because they're on that side, making sure there's no screws missing. This has got a privacy latch installed, so we'll just click it and make sure that it locks from the outside and then it unlocks from the inside the way that it's supposed to. The nib on the privacy latch, make sure it's there. Again, quite often that we find on Golden Grove jobs that this nib is missing when we come to the inspection and it goes on the list as a defect. So something you can quickly check to make sure it doesn't happen. Again, come around, shut the door once, shut it twice, and then close it without the latch there, making sure it's not binding. Everything's neat and tidy and consistent, which is what we're after. The mitre has cracked, so I'm going to put that as a paint touch up. And as you can see from previous, the top of this door wasn't completely sealed, so we put some green tape on there. So the painter knows that door needs to be painted on the top as we come around. Then we'll look behind the door at the wall, making sure there's no paint defects or anything like that. And then I'm going to work my way around the side here. So as I come around the wall, we're looking for paint defects again. One there. Towel rails are installed. Now we just give them a little wobble. Not too much weight, we're not expecting to be able to hang off them, but we don't want them loose. So if I can wobble that and it's loose, I'll be putting that down as a defect that needs adjusting, because let's face it, a tenant or an owner slides a towel on there, and it's already loose, just me wobbling it, they're going to have some problems. So we keep walking our way around here, and then basically get to the vanity, making sure that the junction between the wall and the vanity is tight and sealed. Again, we'll open up the doors on the vanity. While I'm down here, I'm going to run the tap and check the trap. So run that going, run my hand around it again, down the bottom, just make sure there's no screw cover stickers missing, nothing missing underneath there. I'm happy with that. We'll turn the tap off, we'll close the doors, make sure that they close nice and even, which they do, the margin, making sure there's no damage to the edge of the laminate as we come up. And then the next thing we'll do is make sure that there's no damage to the vanity basin. Another common thing that we do find on Golden Grove jobs is that silicone is missing along the back of the vanity basin. So as you can see, it's actually missing on this one as well. So it gives us a good example. This needs to be completely sealed. Okay, if people are going to spill water over there and water can get in the back there and underneath the cupboards, it's going to cause damage without them knowing, and then over the course of a period of time people might be up for new shelves, new cupboards and things like that. The Australian standard for waterproofing does require those junctions to be sealed anyway, so we'll put a green sticker on there so the supervisor knows. The other thing, we'll look at the mirror as we go around. We want a nice even consistent finish down the side of the mirror and the wall. Now we won't ask that to be siliconed or sealed or along here, as long as it's consistent. However, if I get an inconsistent finish between there, I may ask that to be corked up so that I get a nice straight line and it's not visually apparent when you walk in the room. Remembering that this plasterboard wall can be out by 4 mil over 2 meters again, and that, because the mirror is straight, accentuates that defect that may well be intolerance, but we just want to try and take that visual appeal away from them as we go around. So then I'll turn around here, everything's consistent, I'm happy with that, making sure there's no paint defects. So we come around, look down the side here, make sure everything is corked up. Another common thing on Golden Grove is we do miss corking, especially in some tight spots from time to time. We want to make sure that they're all cleaned up. So we're looking at the bath, making sure there's no scratches or chips out of the bath. When they're dirty like this, it does make it hard for us because we're doing a visual inspection and we're not, we can't see through the dirt. But it does look pretty good. Quite common with Golden Grove jobs again is there are scratches. If we think the scratch can be polished out, we'll say just polish it out. If not, you may need a bath repair to come in and do it. We'll run the tap. We're more running the tap just to make sure it works and that it does drain to the bath plug at the other end. When we're looking at mixer taps and penetration through the wall, like the bath spout, another common defect is the tile behind here is being cut too large and there's a gap. Okay, so we're looking to make sure that there's no gap in the tile behind there. If it's got a flange cover on that's covering it, that's fine. As long as we can't see it, we don't want to see it. While I'm here, I'll slide the window, open and close, just making sure it slides freely, making sure there's free of damage, making sure that the blinds are okay. As we go through, these have been pulled up, so I'll just quickly slide them. As you can see, they're all working fine. We go through. Then, on the edge of the bath, we're also making sure that the silicone is neat and tidy. And what another common defect is with Golden Grove homes is the silicone's cracked and shrunk back and leaving a gap. We don't want to see a gap at all there. Remembering there should be a water stop underneath this bath anyway, but we also want it to be aesthetically pleasing as you come in. So after we finish there, we're still looking for paint defects as we go. I'm then going to open the shower up. I'm not having a shower, guys, don't worry. But I will step into the shower. Again, we step into the shower because this is where people are going to be when they look at the defects. We just make sure that there's not too much paint overspray on the edge of the tiles. If there is, I'll just put a green dot on it for them to clean it off and they go through there. We're making sure everything is sealed, all the corking's done, making sure all the caps are installed on the shower screens, which is another common thing that we find on Golden Grove jobs. Okay, I'm happy look at the ceiling because I'm not going to step back in here after I've wet it. I will then take the shower rose off, okay? Another thing that you've got to make sure in this situation is that the shower screen finishes flush with the end of the bath or on the inside. If the bath is actually protruding into the shower screen, it doesn't actually comply with the Australian standard for waterproofing. And it may well be that that's waterproofed, but by having it protrude into the bath or into the shower area, it's actually putting pressure on the tile glue behind the tiles, not necessarily the waterproofing membrane. Now the tile glue having water running down behind it all the time is not really designed for that. So you'll find that tiles will start to fall off over time. Now that I've got this, I just quickly turn the shower on, making sure that it works, making sure that it's not leaking at the junctions anywhere, which we do find on Golden Grove jobs as well. Just making sure that they're all tight. Okay, we're making sure that the floor tiles are draining to the floor waste, and then we just spray, just briefly, the showers into the corners, and then we just turn it off. The reason why we're spraying that into the corners and along the shower screen is just to make sure that the shower screen isn't leaking on the outside. Now, a fully enclosed shower is not allowed to leak, okay, to the outside. So if there's a leak there, we'll put that down as a defect. Another common thing that we do find on Golden Grove jobs, and it's usually the installer has just missed a little piece of caulking or something like that when he's been putting the shower screen in. It just needs to be fixed back up. Because the last thing you want to is damage people slipping over as a result of that leaking. Now we're coming out of the room, we're just going to check the lights. There's 2 lights in here, and also the exhaust fan. Making sure the exhaust fan works and making sure it's not making too much noise. Another thing that we do find quite regularly is that the exhaust fan is binding on something in the roof, so whether the insulation guys have put something across the top or somebody's bumped it and it's making a noise. If it makes excessive noise, we'll put that down as a defect as well. So then we turn that off, and then we just quickly have a glance at the ceiling because we're finishing in the room, and there's no paint defects visible from where I'm standing here. So we're now exiting the room. So now I've exited the bathroom and we're coming into the WC, or the toilet. Now the toilet is a fully enclosed sanitary compartment, as you know, under the building code, which means it's fully enclosed and the gap between the leaf and the toilet is less than 1200, or there's not sufficient room to remove an unconscious person from inside that room, then it requires lift-off hinges to be installed. So we will just quickly check. It's not usually the builder or the carpenter that makes a mistake where the lift-off hinges need to go. A lot of the time it's the painters. When they take the hinges off the doors to paint them, they'll accidentally put the lift-off hinges back on the bathroom door instead of the toilet door. Bathroom doesn't need lift-off hinges. There's no toilet in there, so it's not a sanitary compartment. So basically we're just checking to make sure that works. We'll walk in, and I'll leave the camera out there, and I will shut the door again just to test it. Close it again. Just check the privacy nib, make sure it's working, making sure that works. Obviously with lift-off hinges, the margin at the top of the door can be high at more than 5mm because you need to be able to get the door off. Close it back, make sure the door stops on, and we can see there's paint overspray onto the skirting boards again here, so we'll just dot that out as we go. Have a quick look around. We'll check the blinds. They're being tied up here. Before I do that, I'm just going to slide the glass door, the glass window, and that's all good. Then we close the lid, and we will actually flush the toilet. We just want to flush, make sure it's all working, and what you will find from time to time when you flush it, there's actually a leak at the bottom of the cistern. I actually had a leak on a Golden Grove job just yesterday. In that location. So that's why we flush it, making sure there's no leaks. The other thing that we're checking for here is behind the toilet. Behind the toilet, we want to make sure that the silicone has been carried at the junction to the skirt tile and the floor tile all the way through behind the toilet. It's got to be completely sealed. If it's not sealed, then we put it down as a defect. Again, good place for dust and everything to gather there, but also 150mm up. It's supposed to be a water-resistant junction, so if the toilet does leak, I know there's waterproofing there, but we don't want to be relying on that if we don't have to. Again, we'll check that the toilet roll holder Just give it a wiggle, making sure it's not too loose and hanging off the wall. We'll come through. A little bit of paint on the light switch here, just rub that off. Turn the light on, turn the light off, and have a quick look at the ceiling. And any paint defects that you got, just put your green dot on there, ready for the painter. And then I'm going to exit the room. Now, I don't need to close the door from the outside. It's got a double stop. I know the margin in there is going to be sufficient so that you can't see the gap. And this is the more common one that you will find it. And I hate to say it, boys, in New South Wales, because the carpenters down in New South Wales seem to only want to use a single stop at the top of the door. We do find it quite common on the Golden Grove jobs in New South Wales where we can see daylight when the door's shut, and we want that adjusted. Something to think about, to talk to your carpenter about, ensure that that's done. We work our way along, and we're going into another bedroom here, so we'll step through. Now we come in from the hallway again into another bedroom. Same thing, guys, over and over. A lot of what we do is repetitive. Through that repetition is how we find things that are incomplete or defective. Close the door again, making sure the margins are even, making sure there's no paint on the door hinges, a little bit of debris caught there. Another common thing that we find, especially on these door handles, is the grub screw hasn't been screwed in. Now all the other door handles have been screwed in that I checked because I feel it. You actually feel it on your hand when you close it. The grub screws are protruding on this door handle, so I'm going to take a photo of that. And I may just write it down as a defect to say carpenter to check all of them throughout the house to ensure that they're tight. Those grub screws actually do play a significant part in that door handle to stop it from coming loose. If the supplier didn't need it, they wouldn't have put the grub screw there. So make sure it's tightened up. We'll come through, because the light switch is here as I come in, I'll turn the light on and I'll just turn the fan on. We turn the fan on, we don't run it for too long. Just want to make sure it doesn't make any noise or it's not wobbling out of level, which is fine. And we'll just work our way along the wall here again, looking for paint defects as we go into the corner, up and down. Slide the blinds open again, making sure that there's no defects. What we do find on the window sills, dents in them, usually from the blind or the screen installers. They lift the window out and they sit it on the edge of it. And because it's only pine, it damages it, so we'll dot that for the painter to touch up. Slide the window open and closed, make sure it slides freely, and latches. Again, looking for scratches on the glass and any damage to the fly screen. As we go around, keep working our way around. Looking for paint defects. And now we come to a wardrobe again. So I'm just going to close the wardrobe up like this and just make sure that the sliding doors close flush with the jambs, which they do. Again, we'll slide this one open, hand on the hanging rail, make sure it's painted, make sure it's gapped. Slide that one back, open this side, hand on the hanging rail, and we close that up. So it's nice, neat and tidy. No defects are hidden behind the robe doors, which is what we want. Work our way around again. Again, we're checking the door stops, making sure they're not broken and that they work. Have a look, any paint defects while you're there. Just put a green dot on them. Close the door back up, latches, and then we'll work our way out of the room and back into the hallway. So again, before I exit, I've just checked the hinges and we just check the ceiling one more time. And there's no defects, everything's good, we're visually happy. We work our way back out, back into the hallway, and down here looking for any paint touch-ups or defects that are visible as we come out. Now we get into another door, so we're going to enter this bedroom again through here. So I'll step through. So we're now in the bedroom one, or the master bedroom. Repetition again, check the door, check the margins around the door are even. close it up, make sure the doorstop isn't damaged and the latches. We've got the light switch, so we turn the light on and off, turn the fan on. Again, just quickly making sure that it's not going to cause any damage and that it's working. Then we move our way along the wall. Here, no defects visual. Bit of paint on the corners on the underside there, so we'll just dot that out, and I'll work my way into the walk-in robe. Again, the light's already on, but I'll just switch it off and switch it on just to make sure everything's working. The other reason why we do that is we make sure the switch is up the right way. We have found it on Golden Grove jobs again, where it's a single entry switch point, so it's not a double switch point, which can be switched both ways. Walk-in robe only has one switch to it, and then I have to switch up to turn it on and down to turn it off. As in Australia, we always switch down to turn on. So if that's around the wrong way, we'll ask the electrician to switch that around as well. We come to the robes, we just, again, hang on to the hanging rod a little bit. I can see over the top here, all the screw cover stickers are in, and it's actually been gapped along the back. Again, making sure that these are in tight. Now, what you'll see here is this rod has actually been cut short, and it's only just sitting in the plastic seat. So I'm going to put that down as a defect, because as soon as they hang close on there, the likelihood is that that is going to pull out. So I'll take a photo of that now and put that on the list. Grab that one as we work our way around. You will find sometimes that there's paint damage by the installer of the shelves. So I can see that, I'll just dot it out because he pushed the plasterboard in a little bit. The painter's going to have to gap that and paint that, make it nice, neat and tidy for us. We'll work our way around again, and we get into the entry of the ensuite. Again, we'll work our way into the ensuite. Inside the room, again, there's a toilet in the ensuite. So we're looking for lift-off hinges on the door, because anybody that falls off the toilet forward this way is obviously going to block the passage into the ensuite, so we don't want that. We come in here and we're going to obviously test the door again. So I'm now just repetition again, shut the door, check the nib, make sure the privacy latch works, make sure it works this way. You can see through here there's a little bit of paint there, so we'll dot that out. Open it up. Now with your en-suites, door stop mount on the floor, making sure that stops the door from closing onto the screen, onto the towel rail, sorry. And as you can see, me just looking at this here, there's a large chip out of the floor tile. So it looks like somebody's tried to install this and they've damaged the floor tile at the same time. So we'll just take a photo of that now, put a little green dot on it. There is a cross on the tile, so I'm sure the supervisor's aware of it, but our job is to create the list. So if it isn't done when we're here, it goes on the list. Again, now I'm going to work my way around. I'll just turn the lights on and off, and the exhaust fan. Exhaust fan is not making any noise, it's working how it should. So I'll switch that off now. Checking the toilet roll holder. There's a paint run straight underneath it that I've got there. We'll come to the toilet, lower the seat down, give it a flush. Lift it up. The reason why we lift up and down the toilet seats, you'd be surprised how many times the vitreous china has been damaged or chipped. Somebody's dropped something. We don't lift the toilet seat up, we don't know. So we're testing everything like we said before. Slide the window. Again, we're just going to test the blinds, make sure, especially these Venetians, that nobody's decided to damage them. And that they're fine. Open that up so we can see. Again, because we flush the toilet, make sure there's no leaks, and make sure that the silicon's been done behind the toilet, which is good. And then we work our way around again to the shower. I'm going to just work my way around this side. We'll open the screen door, the door. And looks like I have a shower every time I do an inspection, but I always step in. The best viewing point is when you're inside the shower, making sure everything's sealed, making sure your caps and your pop rivets are all on, making sure there's no gaps behind the inlet valves or behind the mixer taps and the tiles, making sure that the actual hanging rail for the shower rose is actually tight and secure. And then once I'm happy and satisfied, paint defects, I'm going to step out. I'm going to run the shower. Just make sure that all the water drains to the waste. We don't hold it too close, just spray into the shower there and over there and along. Just nothing too onerous. We don't want to be trying to put pressure on that joins over there to cause it to leak. It's just an easy one that we run, and then we just have a quick check, making sure that there's no water that's come outside and leaked in that situation. We work our way over to the vanity again, making sure everything's caulked. The vanity, get the mirror, run the mirror along the back, the vanity basin, which again is not sealed. So an easy defect that could have been done before we came here and saved an item on the list, because it's one of those things that we check on every job. So put the green sticker over the back there. Again, we're looking at the mirror, making sure that the margins are tight. I'm going to run the tap. Check the trap, make sure it's not leaking, making sure there's no damage anywhere. There's a little chip in the edge of the laminate, or the melamine shelf on the edge there. May just need a touch up. So we'll take a photo of that. Making sure the margin's even. I don't know what the blue tape's for there, because everything's even. Might be for the chip that's inside the cupboard. So make sure that's painted in that corner. And then we work our way back around. Just quickly check the shower towel rail isn't loose, which it's not. Paint defects. Just turn the lights off. Have a look at the ceiling. And then the miter up here needs another paint. And then we work our way out the ensuite. Just check the hinges again on your way past, make sure there's no screws missing. And around the side, along the wall. So as we come here, there's a little gap above the power point, so that'll need to be taken off. It's less than 5 cent piece, so we'd expect the painter to be able to do that. Dot that out. Another common thing is the internal miters on the skirting board are cracked and opened, and that's usually caused by the carpet layers when they're stretching the carpet. They accidentally bump it, and then it causes that miter to open. So we dot that out for the painter to do that. We have a look around. Slide the window. Again, making sure it slides freely. We have a look at the window, making sure there's no scratches visible in the coating. Making sure there's no visible scratches in the glass and no damage to the fly screen. As we go around, keep working ourselves to this side. Making sure there's no paint touch-ups. The paint job on this has been quite good. Bit of a paint touch-up there behind the door. And then before we exit, we'll just have a quick look at the ceiling. Making sure there's nothing that stands out as we go through. And then we finish at the door. Checking the hinges as we come out. We've just now exited the hallway. We've done the 3 bedrooms in this area and the bathroom. We're coming back into the main living area, dining. We just keep working our way along the wall. Quite easy. Anything that we can visually see that needs a paint touch up, we'll fix. We'll dot out with the green tape. Turn the lights on and off. Alfresco, turn the light on the alfresco because it's here, just make sure they work. I have had situations in Golden Row before where the lights were actually missing, weren't even installed. So another reason why we check. Come to another sliding door. Make sure there's no damage to the coating around the door. I'm going to slide the screen door this time because it was already half open. Lock, unlock, works. Lock, make sure it locks. And it's neat and tidy. Make sure that there's not a significant amount of paint overspray or anything that the cleaner can't take off. There's a little chip in the actual coating of the sliding door on this side, so we'll get that touched up. We'll take a photo of it. We keep working our way along, making sure that the silicone again is installed, which it wasn't in the laundry. It is here. Making sure there's nothing hiding behind the blinds. And we keep working our way along. Next window, open the blinds up. We're obviously, whenever we do this, we're having a look at the blinds as well, just making sure there's no marks or damage to them. Smooth operation as we open and close them. Slide the door, slide the window, open and close, making sure there's no damage to the glass or the screen. We keep working our way along here. The air conditioning unit's installed. We try to have a good look at the wall above it, because it's common for that to be damaged or marked when the installer was putting it in. We're trying to see visually to make sure that the head unit is actually installed level as well. Something that happens quite often. Not necessarily in Golden Grove, that one, but we do find it quite often on other building inspections. Keep working our way along again. Again, we're just going to check the blinds. Slide them open and closed. Slide the window. Have a look at that as we go around. Make sure there's no paint defects. Make sure there's no scratches, marks. Bit of paint, if there's paint, you know what I mean, on the window frame, a little bit of it, we'll just dot it out again for the painter to come in and clean that off. And we then turn around, keep following the wall. As I said, I'm a rubber, so if it rubs off, I won't put a deep dot on it. And then we're getting back to the hallway at the front of the house. We keep working our way along, making sure there's no paint defects. We'll come around this wall now and into the family room or the lounge room, whichever one you want to call it. We'll come in here, keep working our way around looking for the paint defects as we go. Okay. No paint defects. I'll just quickly open up the blinds now, just test them. We're not looking for refractive light, but we are looking for natural light, because that's how most people are going to see the walls, and it's actually quite a good job. There's nothing too significant visible from the normal viewing position. So that slides and locks all right. Making sure that's neat and tidy. And we're looking for paint defects. Just make sure the power points and the TV point look level, again, visually. When we come around, we get to the light switch again. We're going to turn the lights on, turn the lights off, have a look up and down. And just before I leave the room, I'll check the ceiling. Just make sure there's no paint touch-ups or damage defects. The other thing we're looking at when we look at the ceiling too, with the downlights, making sure they're flush. Quite often they might be pushed out, you know what I mean, when the installer or the insulation or something's put their foot on it. If we can, you know, we'll push them back up, but otherwise, if it's been damaged as a result of that, that'll go on the list as a defect. Then we look out. The other thing that we're always looking at when we're doing the ceilings too is the cornice line. We want to make sure that it's straight and true, and there's no deviation or significant deviation in the cornice or in the walls as we're walking around. So part of the paint defects that we're doing is looking to make sure that everything is symmetrical as we go around and neat and tidy, and nothing significant stands out from a visual inspection point of view. So then we work our way around into the hallway. Again, just checking everything. And we're coming into what would be bedroom 4, the last bedroom. Have a quick look at the door hinges, making sure that all the screws are in the door hinge. We'll come inside. Now we're into the last bedroom. Again, repetition. Making sure that the margins around the door are even. Hinges are good. Door stops working, not damaged. Have a look at the wall as we go. Making sure there's no paint defects visible from a normal viewing position. Go around here. Okay, wind out windows. So we'll just give them a wind. We do find that they sometimes they stick and they might need a service. So if they're sticking, we'll put them down as a defect for them to be serviced. Wind this one out as well. They're both running smoothly, so there's no problems there. Make sure you dot out any paint defects while you're at it. Obviously, again, we're checking there's no scratches on the glass or damage to the screens. When we come around to this side, and the first thing we do again, slide the road doors closed, step back, have a look, make sure that they're closed tight. And look at the top of the shelf, make sure that that's painted and everything's gapped in there. Close that one up. While we're doing this, we're always keeping our eye on to make sure that the vinyl's not damaged. There's no scratches in these coatings up here as well. That looks like it'll rub off. We have a look in there. Let me slide that back closed. And just finish here. The light and the fan. And then quickly we'll just walk back through and have a look at the ceiling. Making sure there's no damage or paint defects to the ceiling. And then we come outside the room. And we're coming to basically the end. Like I said, we're going to finish this side of the door. We've now worked our way. Pretty much can't miss anything in the house on the walls in that situation. We now check the light switches here on this side. Make sure there's no paint defects. Bit of paint missing up there. Paint missing there. Okay. We've already checked the door frame when we first started. Now the last thing we do when we get here, we haven't checked the ceiling of all the main living area yet. So because we didn't really enter and exit a room there, the last thing we'll do is we'll just quickly walk back through the house now down the hallway and start dotting out any defects to the ceiling in the hallway here. Now I always turn the lights off because if you don't, you can't see properly. So I turn the lights off as I go. I'm just going to quickly run through here. There's the main area. Looking everywhere in the ceiling. Check down there. And then one more quick look. Just turning these lights off as I go. So I can see the ceiling. And it's really good actually, guys. There's no visual defects through here. And then the final thing before we finish inside. Now we've looked at the walls, we've looked at the ceilings, we need to look at the floor. So obviously there's floor tiles all the way through the main area of the property. When we've been in the bedrooms, we've looked at the carpet, make sure there's no damage. We should have been looking at that as we go through. But we start back at the end of the house again. And we just cast our eyes. Now there is a bit of dirt and everything. We're basically casting our eyes back over the floors, the carpeted areas, all the way through here. Just making sure that there's no damaged floor tiles or any damage to anything that's significant on the floor. And then we work our way back out here. Again, just looking down now, spending our time looking down so that we've looked everywhere in the house. There's a little bit of paint on the floor tiles the cleaner will probably get. Now, seeing the size of this room, the other thing that we're always going to look for, and Golden Grove knows this, is that we're going to expect that there's intermediate movement joints installed in the floor tiles. So an intermediate movement joint is right here, which is actually silicon instead of grout. Okay, now intermediate movement joints and this is the most misunderstood standard I think I interpret as a building inspector, intermediate movement joints are required at approximately 4.5 metre centres if the room exceeds 6 metres and subject to sunlight, or if the room exceeds 9 metres in any other case, any dimension in that room. So pretty much any room that's got a window or glass sliding door is subject to sunlight. So as soon as the dimension in that room reaches 6 metres, it has to have an intermediate movement joint at approximately 4.5 metres. So we've got that there, just been installed, and stepping it out from over this side, well within 4 metres or 4.5 metres. So we're happy with that, and there should be some more movement joints installed this way, which there is. As we go through, we're still looking for damage to the floor tiles, and there's no damage to the floor tiles, so we're all happy now. We've looked basically everywhere, and that completes the inspection on the inside of the property. Now we're going to move to the outside. So now we're on the outside. We've started at the front portico, looking at the front door. We want to make sure that everything's neat and tidy. We're just going to play with the screen door here. Again, just make sure it closes up. We want to make sure that everything's gapped around there. If there's a bit of paint sitting on the door frame, we'll just dot it for the cleaner or for the painter to wipe off as he comes around. Want to make sure that where the sill tiles meet the wall, that this is actually sealed with flexible sealant and sealed along there as well. So that's another pet hate of ours, and we have found on Golden Grove jobs before that that's been missing. We'll have a look up the ceiling as we come around, and then I'm basically going to work my way one direction around the house. Now, at the first walk around the house, I'm going to stand at about 1 to 1.5 metres away from the outside of the house, and then I'm going to walk around a second time, and it's going to be 3-4 metres away from the house, because you're going to see different things in different locations on the outside of the house. So as I start working my way this way, we've got the isolated piers, which we will look at from a distance when we step out again. We want to make sure these are rendered. We want to make sure there's a V-joint being cut into the render. That V-joint is the location of the termite barrier, okay? So if there's no V-joint in there, the actual render is breaching the termite barrier. So a termite can actually fit between render and brickwork. That V-joint being cut in there pushes them out, which means they're visually seen, which means that the termite barrier has done its job. Without that there, it's a defect. So as we step over to this side, having a look at those isolated piers, this isolated pier has actually been tiled, which is a nice feature and does look quite striking. But we also want to make sure that where the termite barrier is, that this has not been grouted over or covered, because then the termites can get between the tiles and go up the top and then enter the premises without them being visually seen, which means by concealed means they've gotten in, which means the termite barrier hasn't done its job. So we've had a quick look at that. Again, the V-joint has to be followed basically all the way along here, and anywhere that's rendered, that V-joint will follow through. Now have a looking at the V-joint here. It's actually right down close to the exposed aggregate. Now we can't visually see this, but the expectation is, because this has been brought up right close to the termite barrier within 50 mil, that there's been a termite coal joint installed along that joint there. Not something that we will probably comment on, because we expect that that's been done and we can't visually see the difference. But make sure that that has been done, because if it hasn't, then you've got a breach of your termite barrier in this location. We work our way. Now I'm going to go this direction, like I said, away. Just looking at everything. As I can see up here, there is no end cap being installed on the fascia. So that's left a gap between the fascia and the bulkhead. That needs to be sealed and finished off for a neat finish. We keep working our way along. We're looking at the garage door, making sure there's no paint defects here again, making sure the garage door isn't scratched, dented or damaged, the panel door. There's a little bit of paint sometimes on it. We'll put a green dot. Again, to ensure that the painter knows that they need to come back and clean that off. And we're working our way along here again. Now here we can see again the V-joint in the render has been brought up very close. That silicon, I do know from experience, that is a termomasticide silicon, so that's probably been installed to prevent the termites coming up, which means it complies. So we're not going to comment on that either in this situation. We work our way around. Just looking, you can see that the meter box has been painted. Now this is obviously the Telstra or the NBN box that hasn't been installed. It's not really a defect because the builder doesn't install that. The builder's responsibility is just to make sure that we've got the drawstrings there. So we just take a photo of that for our own reference for the report. Now down here, you can see the penetration for the earth wire and the conduit, and there's this massive gap. That gap's actually called the annular space, okay? We want the annular space completely sealed. So I'm going to ask for silicon to be installed around that. Again, vermin proofing, but also for aesthetic purposes. Just makes it look neat and tidy. We've got some paint touch-ups in the render that need to be done while we're here as well. So we'll just put some green dots over those touch-ups. Working our way along. Now as we work our way along, again, we're looking for things that are installed and not installed here at the time of the inspection. The clothesline's installed, so I'm just going to take a photo for my reference again that it's been installed. We're going to look at the slab, make sure there's no damage to the slab, step up on it. We're looking at the brickwork, making sure there's no holes in the mortar, there's no damage, significant damage to the corners of the bricks. Now with bricks, we do allow what we call workable chips, so small chips in the edge of the brick. There's nothing that you can do about that. It was probably like it when they were brought to site in the straps rubbing. So unless the damage is visible from that 1.5 to 2 metres away, we're not going to comment on it. We are looking for consistency in the perp ends and the bed joints on the brickwork as well, making sure that they stay within the tolerances. Now the tolerances for brickwork are quite significant, so if we're going to ping somebody or put it on a report that it doesn't comply, that means that the perps and the bed joints are quite significantly out. So we'd like some attention paid to that. We work our way along, making sure as we come that all the articulation joints have been completely sealed with silicone down there. We're looking around the sliding doors, and here the manufacturer for these sliding doors has a rubber seal which is really good between the brickwork and the edge out here. But as you can see up here, there's actually the rubber seal has been pushed in and it's left a gap. So I'm going to dot that out, and this is quite common again on Golden Grove jobs. That rubber seal needs to be completely covered. We keep working our way along. We're looking at the downpipes. With the downpipes, making sure that none of the standoff brackets have been pulled out of the wall. Okay, making sure that there's no damage to the paint, and then we'll dot that out. We keep working our way along. Again, we're keeping that 1 to 1.5 metres away at the moment, and we're just looking for any damage to the brickwork, the mortar, making sure that the flashings around the windows are good, which they are. Hot water system. So with the hot water system, we're making sure the pipe penetrations have got flange covers on them. The hot water tempering valve overflow, it's actually to a drain. Okay, making sure that that's all been done there. Have a quick look behind, making sure that there's not damage or something hiding from our site as we walk around. We're making sure also the brickwork is not overhanging the slab edge as we come along, which is not at this stage. Bricks can only overhang the slab edge by 15 millimetres. If it's more than that, we're going to ask for them to be supported along the bottom. Now we come around the corner to the rear of the property. We're doing the exact same thing, having a look at the brickwork, making sure that everything's consistent. Working our way along. If there's a tap, we'll just turn it on. Turn it off, make sure that it's not leaking. Make sure it's working how it should. Again, looking at the windows from the distance, making sure that all the seals are there, the downpipes are in, there's no standoff brackets hanging off, there's no damaged bricks. We come around this side and we're doing exactly the same thing. Make sure that there's no mortar on the face of the bricks, that they're clean. That's actually just from the cracker dust on the landscaper. We work our way around. Again, looking at the articulation joints are sealed. And with the articulation joints, it's not really a problem with Golden Grove anymore, but there can't actually be mortar at the sill either. It actually has to be silicone or flexible the whole way. So the standard requires that the articulation joint be completely free of render and mortar. So if we see any mortar in there, we're going to put that down as a defect and expect it to be cut out and then silicone back up. Now we've entered the alfresco, which is the outdoor entertainment area or the patio. Again, we're having a look for any damage to the bricks. There's paint on the sliding door frame there. Another thing that we pick up with the Golden Grove guys is sometimes there's quite a big gap underneath the sliding door that needs to be sealed. This one's quite tight, which is good. We work our way around, and before I step out, I just want to have a quick look at the bulkhead and the ceiling, making sure that there's no paint defects, there's no holes, and it's all been nailed off properly. And then around here, we'll just make sure that there's no paint touch-ups that need to be done to the pole. Another common thing, this is the AbleFlex that's been installed down here. Now if it's like this, which is only about 10mm, it's nice and neat, I don't comment on it. However, we do find that it's installed out of level and it's up quite high. I will ask for that to be trimmed to make a nice, neat flush finish. However, if it's installed like this and it's neat and tidy all the way around, we won't comment on it. Before we leave, we just quickly have a look at the exposed aggregate slab, making sure that there's no damage, chips, breaks in the slab as we walk around. And there isn't any, and we keep working our way along the side here. We get to the air conditioning unit. So obviously you guys know we're expecting that this is the overflow for the AC unit, which has been plumbed into a downpipe. Happy with that. Also happy for that to be plumbed out to the bottom of the bracket here. These brackets are 400mm. That then gets the pipe 400mm away from the footings. So where the water's going to drip is going to be away from the footings. If it's next to the footings, we're going to put it down as a defect and we're going to expect that to be fixed. Okay, so we keep working our way along, having a look at the brickwork as we go, making sure there's no significant gaps anywhere. It's another thing that we do find is gaps in the infill panels. The infill panels above the windows. If they're not tight, we're going to ask for those to be sealed, or we're just going to put it as a painting defect so the painter can actually come and gap them if it's not too big. We quickly walk past the air conditioning unit. Just make sure there's no damage behind it. Just touch it, make sure it's not going to fall off the wall. Again, checking the articulation joint. We're coming around, looking up and down. We come back here. So here we've got, they're obviously prepping for landscaping at the moment. We can't have soft or turf soft landscaping within 75mm of our termite barrier. So you can see that the turf there is actually, or the cracker dust has actually been pushed up against the brickwork and the render within 75mm of the termite barrier. I am hoping that when they prep that, they do lower that so the turf will finish the 75mm down, but because it's not at the moment, I'll probably put it on the report to say, hey guys, ensure that you do have that clear visual below that for the 75mm. Just as a reminder, now we're coming back around to the front of the house again now, back to where we started. As we step through here, we're having a look. Now we've got articulation joints underneath here in the render, both ends. And there's actually gaps in there. So that shows me that those articulation joints haven't been sealed. Again, if they haven't been sealed with flexible sealant, it's going to be a defect. I also need all the render and everything cleaned out of it before they seal it. The masonry is supposed to be able to move on those locations. If it's full of rigid render or mortar, then it's not going to move as it's intended, and we could have other issues on the house as a result. So then, once I get back to basically where I've started, we've done the inspection once on the outside. Now we're going to step back and actually have a look at it from a little bit of a distance. So now I'm stepping back to have a look at the property from a distance. We're mainly now going to focus on the roof, the fascia and the gutter. Now very common on Golden Grove jobs, that there's scratches in the gutter or there's stuff on the gutter. Another thing with the raised porticos is that the painter hasn't extended the paint all the way to the end of the soffit above the actual roof line. On this one it's good, but it is something we do find quite common on Golden Grove jobs. As we come along here, we're checking to make sure that all the joins and everything are neat and tidy. And as you can see, there's all visible silicone hanging out the end of the miter on the gutter. So I just use my trusty tap stick and I'll take a photo of that to put that onto the list as a defect. We're standing back here and I can already see, even at this distance, which is probably 2.5 meters away, there's scratches all along the gutter. Gutter there, gutter there. The most common place to find scratches on the gutter is at the front above the garage, because that's usually where everybody puts their ladders to access the roof. So they're the ones that actually scratch it. So what we do with scratches on gutters is, if we find them everywhere, we just usually write it as one defect on the report to touch up scratches marked with green tape. So all you need to do is follow your eyes around and you'll find the green tape to be able to touch those up. So we're keeping that distance again. So we come around, and here you can even see that the corner miter on the gutter hasn't been folded and tapped. So we've got an opening, which looks unsightly. So the installer hasn't done a very good job on that. So we'll dot that out and we'll mark that down as a defect. And now we've seen it on that one, we're going to check all of them as we go through, because it may be a common thing that we write all over the report. So we come through. Sometimes the sun can be in the worst spot at the distance, and I can still see another scratch on the gutter. Stepping away here. Having a look at that distance. Now from this distance too, we can see the sting pipe or the vent pipe on the roof. Quite often the cowling cover cap on that sting pipe is missing, so we put that down as a defect. While I'm walking through here too, there's been an IO cover installed into this concrete. I want it sealed around. I want silicone around that so that it's nice, neat and finished. So we'll take a photo of that to put onto the defects list as well. So we step back again at that distance, trying to keep the sun out of our eyes. Having a look. Making sure we don't trip over. Now while we're at that distance, we step back. We're also looking back at the boundary fences, making sure there's no damaged palings and everything's been nailed off neat and tidy. We have a look at the boundary fences as we go through. Now the landscaping hasn't been finished on this job, so if the landscaping was finished, we'll be looking at the turf, we'll be looking at the field gullies, making sure they're in, and we'll also be checking the gates and the fence returns, making sure for operation. Now, because it's not done at this stage, we're going to do a second inspection on this job, at which time we'll check. Because there was no landscaping, it will be marked on our report, not completed. we'll have a look at the landscaping finish at that stage. So just at the distance again, there's scratches again on the gutter, just here. So we'll put some green tape on it. Work our way along. Now, just before I run off, remember I said we'll check those miters. The actual miter on this gutter is worse than the one at the front. So we'll get the installer back to cut and tap those flush around. Another common thing that we do find on fascias and gutters and things too is pop rivets missing. Pop rivets missing on the fascia, pop rivets missing on the corner brackets underneath here. So under here, just obviously the installer got busy and he forgot to do it in that instance. Again, he hasn't really tapped his miters. So now we've got it on every single one of the external miter, we're going to pretty much write it as a defect. All external miters need to be dressed. And we've got another scratch on the gutter here. Keep going around. Obviously, where we can, we're always going to look at the roof sheets as well, making sure we're looking for the screws, consistency, you know what I mean, in the screw patterns. Remembering that the screw patterns have to increase the closer they get to the ridge or to the edge of the sheet. But we are only doing a visual inspection, so we're not going to get on the roof. It's over 2 metre fall now. So anything that we look at that, we deem to be a safety hazard. So on this side, I can actually walk up the batter and have a good look. And as I do that, I found another scratch in the gutter. I just keep dotting those out. Relatively easy to fix the scratches on the gutter, but we want it done. So we're giving a nice neat finish. And as you can see, there's a fill gully as well that hasn't been installed yet, or an IO. So the IO, inspection outlet from the plumber, hasn't been fitted off, which means that the plumbing inspection probably hasn't been done on this job. Again, another dot there. The roof sheets are looking good. We come along here. So you look up here in the valley. Now we can see it from a distance. Look at the roof sheets, they aren't flush along the valley. So the roof unit is going to have to come back and make sure that we get a nice flush, even cut finish on the valley there. We'll come across the front now. Just have another quick look. And this valley is much better, so it's nice and neat. Now before we finish off on the outside, we've got the driveway down, so we're just going to have a quick look over the driveway. We want to make sure that the control joints or the movement joints are being tooled in or cut into the driveway. If they haven't been cut in, then we're going to put that down as a defect. And as I keep working my way along here, we work our way to the next one. So they're all in there. Now that is part of the cleaning process, and again we'll say yes or no whether it needs cleaning. The inside of the property needs a complete clean on this job. It hasn't been cleaned at all before we did the inspection, so we're just going to say yes, it needs a clean. But that's pretty much our visual inspection now completed inside and outside the property for a QA process. If we need to, we may also enter the roof space, but it really depends on the type of build that we're looking at. Usually we'll enter the roof space if there's a firewall or something like that we need to inspect on a duplex.